41 Commotion in town. Red Leaf Town, Fountain Plaza. The entire plaza was dyed crimson by the setting sun. There were quite a lot of lifestyle players, one setting up food stalls and selling snacks that were unique to God's domain. These snacks tasted delicious, and they were much better than the delicacies in real life. Also, their selling price was just 2 or 3 coppers. It was truly a bargain. Many players would come here to rest and taste the delicacies of God's domain after a day's worth of hard-fought battles. After all, they could only earn tens of coppers in a single day, and after deducting the expended costs, they would only be left with slightly over 10 coppers. So, giving them a treat should not be a problem. There were quite a few couples sitting on the stone benches, chatting. They ate the food they bought as they enjoyed a lovely time. Suddenly, every player in Red Leaf Town received a system announcement. System, a player has triggered a special storyline. Insurrection of the Little Fishman has been activated. An expedition quest has been activated in Red Leaf Town. Players can now receive the expedition quest from the Adventurers Guild. Completing the expedition quest will reward players with bountiful rewards and guild reputation. All the players were shocked. In Red Leaf Town, a place where quests were extremely rare, there was actually an expedition quest. Moreover, the rewards were great. It was truly unimaginable. Who was the awesome person that actually triggered a special storyline? The player who achieved this feat attracted the attention of every player in Red Leaf Town. Everyone wondered what great rewards this player gained for activating the storyline. After all, activating a storyline was definitely a rare occurrence. So, how could the rewards be few? Quite a lot of players started having their own wicked thoughts. They wanted to kill off the player who activated the storyline quest. Unfortunately, the system announcement did not reveal the player's name. Compared to the average players, the various large guilds were in a state of turmoil. At this stage of the game, aside from clearing dungeons, there was not a single quest that was capable of increasing guild reputation. A guild required guild reputation to level up. As long as their guild could reach level 2 a step earlier, they would be able to obtain the corresponding guild benefits, creating a large advantage over the other guilds. Currently, the other towns surrounding Scarlet River also received the same system announcement. It wasn't just Red Leaf Town. All of the large guilds began strategizing a plan for their crusade against the Little Fishman. Meanwhile, Shi Feng, who was the cause of all this commotion, currently sat inside the auction house. The auction house was a very convenient place. The items placed on auction by players were not just limited to Red Leaf Town, they could be seen and bought in the hundreds of towns and small cities under the influence of White River City. However, the auction house was very cunning. They charged a 5% handling fee for all items auctioned, so the items there are usually very expensive. However, the auction house was unquestionably the best place for players to sell certain items anonymously. Also, it had been quite some time since God's domain started. The players had already amassed quite an amount of coins, and the large guilds should have already piled up a lot of funding. If Shi Feng were to set up a stall in Red Leaf Town, not only would he attract attention, he might also be targeted by people like Flaming Tiger. More importantly, the reason Shi Feng chose the auction house was that there were too few players in Red Leaf Town who could afford the items he planned to sell. However, it was a different story if there were hundreds of towns competing for them. Hence, Shi Feng placed a mysterious iron plate armor on the auction house, setting its base price at 25 silver coins. Then, he placed 5 pieces of bronze equipment, with the base price of the plate armor at 3 silver coins, and the others at 2 silver coins. As for the level 10 fine gold greatsword, the result of placing it on auction would be too terrifying to imagine. This weapon was worth at least 2 gold coins, which was the equivalent of 200 silver coins. Currently, even 1 silver coin was extremely precious, so who would be able to even afford the weapon? Following which, Shi Feng searched his bag via the half-transparent screen. Initially, players were gifted with a bag that had 100 slots. However, it was far from enough for Shi Feng. Every player could equip a maximum of 7 bags. So, Shi Feng immediately bought 6 of the largest bags currently available. Each of the bags had 25 slots, and each sold for 40 copper coins. 6 bags meant 240 copper coins. Such an amount was definitely unaffordable to normal players, but it was just a small sum to Shi Feng. Shi Feng's storage space increased by a lot after equipping the 6 bags. Afterward, Shi Feng left the auction house and set up a stall not far from it. He was not the least bit interested with the storyline quest he triggered. He would not fight over the rewards with the others. He already had his fill, so it was only proper for the others to have the leftovers. Buying magic essences and stones in bulk. A stack 2 of magic essences for 6 coppers, a stack of stones for 10 coppers. Shi Feng loudly shouted. At this stage of the game, magic essences were some of the materials needed to practice enchanting, whereas stones were one of the building materials engineers needed. However, many level 0 to level 3 monsters would drop these materials when killed, so they were barely worth anything. The materials the many guilds obtained were also sufficient to supply their own lifestyle players, so they would never buy any of them. As for normal players, they would only occasionally buy these materials. However, there was still an ocean of players that did not know how to deal with these materials. They would usually sell these materials to NPCs at a low price. A stack of 20 bottles of magic essence sold for 5 coppers, and a stack of 100 stones sold for 9 coppers. Shi Feng bought them at a price of 1 copper coin higher, so there were quite a lot of players who were willing to sell their materials to him. An extra copper per stack would still be quite a significant income. Magic essence was one of the required materials to make the garrison armor. Besides that, large amounts of copper ore and bronze ore were also needed. These ores were scarcely available, and all the large guilds bought them in bulk. Unfortunately, it was very difficult to get a hold of them. Shi Feng also originally planned to grind for ore. However, now that he had the Philosopher's Stone, ore was no longer a problem. The Philosopher's Stone could carry out elemental refinement. That meant it could refine stone. There was a great chance to obtain ore, even rare ore. There was absolutely no need for Shi Feng to personally grind for them, he could just buy them at an extremely low price. Because of this, tens of thousands of players had effectively become Shi Feng's laborers. Very quickly, a large crowd of players had gathered in front of Shi Feng. "Big brother, I have 6 stacks of magic essence here. Will you take them? I have 3 stacks of stone, do you want them?" Many players started asking Shi Feng, worried that his bag would fill. After all, they just had too many magic essences and stones. There were no players who were willing to buy these materials. However, it was also a shame to just sell them to the NPCs, so the materials just stayed inside their bags. "I'll take all of them. Just trade them over," Shi Feng said. Before this, Shi Feng amassed quite a bit of wealth. Including his transaction with Gentle Snow, he was in possession of quite a lot of coins. Shi Feng could definitely buy large amounts of magic essences and stones. A player was selling 3 stacks of magic essences here. A player was selling 5 stacks of stones there. Within moments, Shi Feng had acquired 60 stacks of magic essences and 85 stacks of stones. The money that remained in his pockets was less than 10 coppers now. "Sorry, but I'm full," Shi Feng packed up his stall after explaining. Suddenly, the many remaining players who came to sell off their magic essences and stones had faces filled with disappointment. "Big brother, will you still buy them in the future?" a player asked. "I will. However, it will still be a period before I do buy them. You all can save them up for now," Shi Feng resolutely said. The amount of magic essences and stones Shi Feng just purchased was far from enough for him to become an advanced forging apprentice 3. After leaving the business street, Shi Feng arrived at the forging association. He paid 5 coppers to rent a basic forging room for 1 hour. Inside the basic forging room, all the equipment needed for forging was provided, players did not need to buy their own equipment. The intermediate ranked forging room was a lot better, it could increase the success rate of forging by 3%. However, it costs 1 silver per hour to use that room. As for advanced forging rooms, those were not available in small towns. They were only available in cities. However, their prices were extremely staggering. TL notes. 1 Lifestyle players, players who focus on their auxiliary jobs, i.e. forgers, alchemists/potion makers, etc. 2 A stack, this is a gaming term used to refer to a group of identical items which will take up only 1 space/slot in the player's bag. The stack of items has a maximum limit as to the amount of items it can hold within a slot, i.e. a full stack of magic essence has 20 bottles of the item. If a player has 21 bottles of magic essence, a second stack will be created in the player's bag. 3 Advanced Forging Apprentice, forgers can be distinguished into several stages, which are Forging Apprentice, Forger, Master Forger, Grandmaster Forger. These stages are then further distinguished into 3 different ranks, Basic, Intermediate, Advanced. 42 Elemental Refinement. Forging Association, inside a forging room. Shi Feng took out a stack of stone, placing it on the table. A stack of stone had 100 pieces in total. They immediately filled up the round table, some even fell to the ground. "Time to see how good you actually are," Shi Feng smiled as he retrieved the crimson-red Philosopher's Stone. If the Philosopher's Stone were seen by someone else, the consequences Shi Feng would face would be immense. Hence, Shi Feng rented a forging room. Without his permission, nobody could enter the room. Shi Feng took a piece of stone from the table and used the Philosopher's Stone on it. "System, do you wish to use the Philosopher's Stone for elemental refinement?" Shi Feng immediately chose yes. Following which, the Philosopher's Stone started emitting a faint red glow, a mysterious power flowed into the stone. Pang! The stone the size of a fist suddenly turned into yellow sand, scattering to the ground. The result was a failure. However, Shi Feng revealed a calm smile at the result. It did not perturb him in the slightest. Afterward, he picked up another stone and tried again. Ore was very precious. A normal copper ore sold for 2 coppers, they were only worth 1 copper coin if sold to an NPC. A stack of 100 copper ore could be sold for 200 copper coins to guilds, and they would still fight over them. Compared to a stack of stone, which only sold for 10 copper coins, copper ore was just too expensive. Elemental refinement extracted the metal element out of the stone. However, some stones did not possess any metal element. So, it was only natural that they turned to sand. Such failures were just too common. Pang! 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 There was still no ore after 10 consecutive tries. Shi Feng started becoming depressed. The success rate was just too low. Shi Feng even started to suspect that these stones were picked from a desert to result in all the yellow sand. Relax, relax. There are still many stones left. Shi Feng sucked in a deep breath, reassuring himself. He picked up another piece of stone, trying elemental refinement once more. Pang! This time, the stone still scattered into a pile of sand. However, in the middle of the yellow grains, there was a piece of metal that had a purplish-red luster. It was copper ore. With the first piece of copper ore in his hands, Shi Feng let out a relaxed breath. His hands started moving at a faster pace. All the stones above the stone table turned into yellow sand within moments. The stack of stones had yielded a total of 23 pieces of copper ore and 2 pieces of bronze ore. Compared to copper ore, the price of bronze ore was 3 times that of copper ore. They were worth 3 copper coins when sold to NPCs. Due to the rarity of bronze ore, players would buy them at 7 copper coins apiece. Seeing the ores on the table, Shi Feng felt the Philosopher's Stone was truly a gold mine. Even if the Philosopher's Stone was currently damaged, it was still out of the ordinary. It was no wonder why many kingdoms were willing to muster up their armies and fight for the Philosopher's Stone. Having the Philosopher's Stone in hand was the equivalent of having a wealthy treasury. At that time, a kingdom would find it hard not to become prosperous. Shi Feng kept the ores on the table and brought out another stack of stones. Stack after stack of stones disappeared, whereas the amount of yellow sand had piled up into a small hill. Fortunately, the forging room could be cleaned of rubbish with just a click of a button. After pushing the clean button, the small hill of yellow sand vanished from sight. After spending an hour's time, Shi Feng had refined 40 stacks of stones. He had obtained a little over 7 stacks of copper ore and a little over 1 stack of bronze ore. They would be worth over 20 silver coins if Shi Feng sold them. Meanwhile, the cost of obtaining these ores were only 4 silver coins. The difference was 5 times the price. It was an absolute profit. Most importantly, ores dropped in very small numbers, so it was impossible to buy them in bulk. Shi Feng received a system notification the moment he had left the forging room. System, the violent bear armor you placed at the auction house has been sold. After deducting the procedural fees, 31 silvers 53 coppers have been placed in your bag. System, the dark star boots you placed at the auction house has been sold. After deducting the procedural fees, 3 silvers 21 coppers have been placed in your bag. A series of notifications from the auction house had caused Shi Feng's lips into a smile. As expected, the greater the competition, the higher the price would go. Shi Feng was very satisfied with the amount the item sold for. He never imagined that a mysterious iron plate armor for shield warriors could actually be sold for over 30 silver coins. It seems there were a lot of wealthy people within the area of influence of White River City. After selling the equipment, Shi Feng had suddenly become a wealthy tycoon. With over 50 silver coins in his pockets, even his confidence was different now. Currently, players would still be happy over having 20 to 30 copper coins on their person. Shi Feng already possessed more than 50 silver coins. Including the silver coins Gentle Snow owed him, if Shi Feng were to sell off the copper ore he had immediately, he would instantly become wealthy with gold. However, he would not sell the ores. These ores were the foundation for Shi Feng to earn big money. Following which, Shi Feng rented the forging room for another hour. He turned the remaining stones into ores. His luck was better this time around. From 45 stacks of stones, he obtained 10 stacks of copper ore and 2 stacks of bronze ore. With this, Shi Feng had a total of 17 stacks of copper ore and 3 stacks of bronze ore. It would be quite some time before Shi Feng could use them all up. With money in hand now, Shi Feng once more arrived at the central area of the Forging Association, at the administration area. Currently, there were quite a few forger players, that were groomed by guilds, renting forging rooms. This is just evil. It actually costs 5 coppers for an hour. My guild just gave me 30 coppers. That's not enough at all. That's considered good already. At least the equipment is all there. Look at the forging equipment. Even the most common required a few silvers. An entire set would cost over 30 silver coins. It's just a blatant rip-off. You still haven't seen the intermediate forging room. It costs 1 silver an hour, but the room only increases your success rate by 3%. Even a first-rate guild would not be able to handle such a price. A few forgers continuously complained. They bitterly detested the prices set by the Forging Association. However, there was also a hint of bragging carried in their voices. After all, they had the support of their guilds, whereas normal players wouldn't even be able to rent a forging room, not to mention increasing their forging levels. Shi Feng circled these players, walking towards the manager of the association, saying, "I want to rent an intermediate forging room. May I know how long you wish to rent it for?" The ashen youth who was the association's manager excitedly asked. Currently, a majority of the adventurers were poor blokes. Every one of them only rented the basic forging rooms, and even then, they rented with unwillingness. So, a great change occurred to the manager's servicing attitude when he was able to see a rich adventurer like Shi Feng. Looking at the time, it was currently morning in the real world. When using the virtual gaming helmet, a person could not stay within God's domain for too long. 2 hours then. Shi Feng said after some thought. "All right, here is your key. That will be a total of 2 silver coins." The manager handed the key over to Shi Feng, smiling. Shi Feng took out 2 shiny silver coins, placing them on the table and turning around to leave. The players who had previously been discussing the deviousness of the Forging Association were all dumbstruck. They even thought they were hallucinating. However, they were indeed silver coins on the table, and not the scarlet-yellow copper coins. "Crap, a tycoon!" a male elementalist said in envy. "Brother Tycoon, little sister knows how to warm beds." Another pretty and flirtatious female player winked at Shi Feng, flattering him. "Isn't it just some dirty money? I will definitely become an intermediate forging apprentice a step ahead of him," a male priest said in a sour tone, even though he knew it to be impossible. The facilities of the intermediate forging room were much better than the basic one. On the surface, the room itself only increased the success rate of forging by 3%. However, including the facilities that came with the room, the success rate was increased by at least 5%. To a forger, a difference of 5% success rate was like the difference between heaven and earth. 43 Book of Forging. Shi Feng took the key to the intermediate forging room and went up the second floor, ignoring the flirting young lady. The first floor of the Forging Association only had basic forging rooms, whereas intermediate forging rooms were located on the second floor. When compared to the first floor, there were far fewer people on the second floor. There were only NPCs walking around. Players would not come to this place at all. Also, there were only 20 intermediate forging rooms, unlike the basic rooms, which numbered at 50. Shi Feng entered the intermediate forging room. The room was much larger and refined. The facilities available were also better than the basic room, especially the hammer and flame. These 2 items were not simple at all. Shi Feng held up the silvery white hammer that was placed on the iron-woven felt. 100 Refinement Hammer, Bronze Rank. Forging items. When forging, the success rate is increased by 3%. Requirements, Strength 4. Just this 100 Refinement Hammer alone was hard to obtain by players. The best hammers NPCs sold were common hammers. Those hammers did not increase the success rate of forging. As for stealing this 100 Refinement Hammer, it was an impossible task. Items that belonged to the forging room could not be taken away by players. The flame here was extraordinary as well. Instead of the usual scarlet, yellow color, the flame here burned with a scarlet, green color. It was not a common flame, but a mysterious flame. Shi Feng took a look at its description. Scarlet Devil Flame, Tier 1 Mysterious Flame. Special item, possesses extremely high temperatures. Items smelted with the flame will have higher purity. When refining potions or forging items, there will be a definite increase in success rates. Mysterious flames were rare and powerful flames. These flames had varying strength, and they could be categorized into 9 tiers. The first tier was the weakest, whereas the 9th tier was the strongest. However, even a first-tier mysterious flame was not something that could be easily obtained by players. Due to the mysterious flame's rarity, its price within God's domain was extremely high. Including the fact that both potion making and forging required mysterious flames, the prices of mysterious flames had become even more shocking. There was once a tier 4 flame that caused tens of first-rate guilds to fight over it. After the death of millions of players, the flame finally ended up in the hands of the world dominators. Not long after, a master potion maker in world dominators rose to become a grandmaster potion maker, increasing the influence of the world dominators by a large leap. Shi Feng had a great yearning within him when he looked at the burning mysterious flame. It was the thirst of a forger. Just when Shi Feng was in deep thought, he suddenly recalled a matter. On the 2nd month of God's domain's operation, the third-rate guild, Glorious Light, had discovered a Tier 2 mysterious flame, Ice Blue Devil Flame. The flame was found in the 100 Ghosts Forest, and its discovery induced great envy into the other guilds. At that time, there were a lot of lifestyle players who had applied to join Glorious Light, allowing the guild's power to abruptly increase and becoming the tyrant of a small city. However, there were also many guilds who gathered information in secret, wanting to obtain a mysterious flame for themselves. Naturally, Shadow was no exception to this. Shadow had discovered the location and method of obtainment of the mysterious flame from Glorious Light's inner circle. Unfortunately, such mysterious flames only appeared once, never appearing again after they were gone. This discovery caused many guilds to waste their efforts. As he was thinking about the ice blue devil flame, Shi Feng suddenly started having intentions towards this mysterious flame. If he could make it his own, it would definitely be of great help to him in the future when he started his own guild. Moreover, the flame would be of great help in pushing Shi Feng to become a true forger one. However, Shi Feng still needed to hash out a proper plan to obtain the ice blue devil flame. He needed to prepare many things before he could obtain the flame. Following which, Shi Feng took out the garrison armor's forging design. Without wasting time, he immediately chose to learn it. System, you have learned how to forge the garrison armor. Afterward, Shi Feng placed all the needed materials onto the stone table. Then, he took out the immensely precious book of forging and started to forge. Shi Feng was a basic forging apprentice. His success rate for forging a level 0 common equipment did not exceed 20%, and after a successful forging, there was a 40% chance for him to obtain 1 proficiency point. If Shi Feng were to forge the garrison armor, a level 3 bronze equipment, his chance of success would not exceed 5%. Successfully forging a piece of bronze equipment would bring an additional bonus, which was a 100% chance to obtain 2 proficiency points. However, 1,000 proficiency points were needed to become an intermediate forging apprentice. Obtaining such a large amount of points required equally large funding to support it. There was no way for a lifestyle player to support such a large sum of money by themselves. The forgers in guilds all started out by forging common equipment. There was not a single guild who would allow these lifestyle players to forge bronze equipment right off the bat. To begin with, they didn't even possess a forging design for bronze equipment, and even if they did, they wouldn't carry out such an action. The success rate of a basic forging apprentice was just too low, and the materials needed were just too expensive. A single failure would cost 1 silver coin or more. It was a loss that not even guilds could handle. Moreover, they couldn't even collect that many materials to make the equipment. However, Shi Feng did not have such worries. He had the Philosopher's Stone, so he did not lack in resources. Furthermore, the materials needed to make the garrison armor were cheaply priced. It only required 5 bottles of magic essences, 5 pieces of bronze ore, and 20 pieces of copper ore. The cost of making the garrison armor was only 80 copper coins. When compared to the cost of making other bronze equipment, it was at least 20 coppers cheaper. The garrison armor also had very good attributes, so it was extremely welcomed. Shi Feng wouldn't have to be troubled over figuring out how to sell it. The most important thing was the Book of Forging. The Book of Forging could increase the success rate of forging common equipment by 70%, bronze equipment by 50%, mysterious iron equipment by 30%, secret silver equipment by 20%, fine gold equipment by 10%, dark gold equipment by 5%, and epic equipment by 1%. With such attributes, the Book of Forging could allow a player to become a master forger easily and unimpeded. Basic forging apprentices originally had a 20% success rate at forging common equipment. Including the 70% from the book, the success rate would become 90%. Further including the facilities of the intermediate forging room and removing the possibilities of mistakes, the success rate of making common equipment was 99% or higher. Unless the player was a pig too, failure was impossible. The Book of Forging's frightening abilities could clearly be seen from this. As for the garrison armor, Shi Feng had a 5% success rate for making it. Including the 50% from the book, the 3% from the room's facilities, and also the effects of the mysterious flame, Shi Feng now had a 60% success rate for making the garrison armor. Not to mention bronze equipment, even if common equipment had a 60% success rate, it would still drive forger players mad. Such a high percentage for success was something unimaginable to forgers. Following which, Shi Feng started slowly making the garrison armor according to the forging design's requirements. He first smelted the copper and bronze ore in the fire. After being in the fire for 5 minutes, the ores started to melt and form a lump. Afterward, Shi Feng added in the magic essence, letting it burn for another minute before removing the red-hot ore and placing it onto the metal felt. The ore's scorching hot temperature caused Shi Feng to sweat. However, Shi Feng did not dare be careless, as the following process was the most important part. After finishing the preparations, Shi Feng held the 100 refinement hammer and readied it to hammer the fiery ore. Dang! 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 Sparks flew in all directions. The hammering sounds echoed throughout the wide forging room. Shi Feng struck every hit with careful precision. In his previous life, Shi Feng did not learn forging. He only learned the gathering skill. However, he still knew quite a lot about forging. After all, he had conversed with a master forger quite often, so he was knowledgeable to the degree of not making certain low-leveled mistakes. After hammering the ore over 100 times, Shi Feng felt that it was perfect. Shi Feng wiped away the sweat on his forehead, carefully selecting the crimson ore's interface and clicking the complete button. Following which, the red-hot ore started transforming. Within 5 seconds, it had transformed into a silvery grey-colored armor. On the surface, there seemed to be nothing wrong with it. However, equipment's successful forging did not just depend on its appearances, there was also its quality. Quality included the equipment's attributes and rank. Bronze equipment that was badly forged would have their ranks decreased to common, or their base attributes would not be up to standards. Hence, Shi Feng selected the information of the armor, checking whether it was a success or a failure. TL notes. 1. A true forger equals this part is referring to the ranks for a forger, i.e. forging apprentice forger, master forger, grandmaster forger. 2. Unless the player was a pig equals an idiot. 44. Change. Although Shi Feng could handle failure, there was nobody who was willing to squander their money for no good reason. So, Shi Feng was, more or less, slightly nervous. After Shi Feng selected the option to check the armor's information, 3 words appeared on the panel: identification in progress. The red loading bar slowly increased. The system was currently determining the statistics of the equipment. After 3 seconds had passed, the system finished identifying the armor and revealed the armor's information. Garrison armor, bronze rank plate armor. Level 3. Equipment requirement, strength 10. Defense plus 22. Strength plus 2, endurance plus 2. HP plus 150. Durability 35/35. Additional ability. Defensive power, reduces damage taken by 3%. Restricted to shield warriors and guardian knights. System, garrison armor has been successfully forged. Forging proficiency increased by 2 points. Obtained 800 EXP. Great. It even has an additional ability, defensive power. Shi Feng was extremely happy when he saw the additional ability on the garrison armor. He never imagined his first try at forging a piece of bronze equipment would be a success. He even obtained so much EXP. It was no wonder why the master forgers in his previous life never went out to grind, but their levels were not a bit low. Not only had the garrison armor forged met the standard attribute values, but it also possessed an additional ability. Originally, the garrison armor did not possess defensive power. However, when the forger exhibited extraordinary skill, coupled with the presence of the mysterious flame, there was a chance for an additional ability to appear on the equipment. In such occurrences, the price of the equipment would be increased to another level. Shi Feng took his time sizing up the garrison armor, feeling the texture of the silvery grey metal and admiring its eye-catching design. The average piece of bronze equipment was absolutely no match for it. Shi Feng was very satisfied with his creation. Currently, common equipment was still the mainstream equipment for players. Even if players were to reach level 6 in the future, it would not be a surprise to find them wearing only common equipment. After all, it was too hard to obtain bronze equipment. As for the elite parties, just having 1 to 2 pieces of bronze equipment was considered being blessed. The garrison armor could be used by both shield warriors and guardian knights. If Shi Feng were to sell the armor, the elite parties would definitely welcome it. After all, the quality of an MT's equipment could ease the difficulty of conquering a dungeon a lot. Even if Shi Feng were to set the price at 4 silver coins, these parties would still buy the armor, regardless the cost. As for the defensive power of the garrison armor, its benefits towards a party's MT went without saying. Shi Feng would not accept anything lower than 5 silver coins for this armor. With his first experience at successful forging, Shi Feng continued forging garrison armors. However, Shi Feng took out the 100 refinement steel this time. He wanted to know what effects the steel would have when it was used to forge equipment. Within 10 minutes, the second garrison armor took form. However, the color on this garrison armor was different than the previous one. Instead of having a silvery grey color, it was pitch black now. After going through 3 seconds of identification, the system displayed the statistics to Shi Feng. Garrison heavy armor, bronze rank plate armor. Level 3. Equipment requirement, strength 14. Defense plus 25. Strength plus 2, endurance plus 4. HP plus 150. Durability 40/40. Additional ability. Defensive power, reduces damage taken by 5%. Restricted to shield warriors and guardian knights. System, garrison heavy armor has been successfully forged. Forging proficiency increased by 2 points. Obtained 1000 EXP. System, due to your forging genius, forging proficiency has been increased by an additional 2 points. Currently, Shi Feng had completely forgotten about the additional proficiency points that his forging talent gave him. Instead, his eyes were fixated on the garrison heavy armor. The attributes on the armor were already comparable to a piece of level 3 mysterious iron equipment. The price tag on it was at least 10 silver coins. Shi Feng never imagined that the 100 refinement steel would create such large changes. Shi Feng had no choice but to admit that the item given by a master forger was not ordinary. Unfortunately, Shi Feng only had 9 pieces of 100 refinement steel remaining. Naturally, now that Shi Feng knew the effects of the 100 refinement steel, he would not simply squander them away. He would set them aside and use them when he had good equipment to forge. 2 hours quickly passed by. Shi Feng forged garrison armors without stopping during this time. He had obtained a total of 23 pieces of garrison armor, but he also failed to forge 4 pieces. Shi Feng was very satisfied with the result. A single, successfully forged garrison armor could easily remedy the loss of the 4 failures. At the same time, Shi Feng himself had also risen to level 3. His current level was not that far from the expert players. Moreover, his forging proficiency had increased to 44 points. Such an increase was at least 4 to 5 times faster than those forgers that belonged to guilds. Following which, Shi Feng left the intermediate forging room and arrived in front of the auction house. He immediately auctioned off the 11 pieces of garrison armor that did not possess defensive power, their base prices set at 4 silver coins. As for the garrison armors and garrison heavy armor that possessed defensive power, Shi Feng placed them aside for now. He wanted to let these guilds and elite parties have a taste of the armor first. That way, the remaining garrison armors could be sold at an even better price. Afterward, Shi Feng set up a stall in the trade area, casually yelling out. Following which, many players ran over to Shi Feng, selling their stones and magic essences to him. After purchasing the materials for half an hour, Shi Feng took a look at the time. It was near nightfall in God's domain. The monsters at night became much more powerful and killing them became much more difficult. This period was not suited for leveling, and Shi Feng should rest as well. Currently, he was still using the virtual gaming helmet, not the virtual gaming pod, to play God's domain. The virtual gaming pod could provide the energy and nutrients required by the player's body at any time. It could also stimulate the body's muscles, preventing the body from weakening due to playing God's domain for long periods. Shi Feng's finger tapped and clicked, calling out the system interface and choosing to log off. Currently, within the cramped rented apartment, the sunlight had long since seeped through the windows and scattered throughout the room. The temperature within the room was also starting to rise. Shi Feng took off the gaming helmet. He lifted up his body and stretched. After more than 10 hours of inactivity and lying on the bed, Shi Feng's body was numbed throughout. He needed to move around before he could return to normal. Shi Feng started doing push UPS, sit UPS, and other forms of basic training. In this extremely materialistic age, body training had already become indispensable in one's life. After tens of years of constant research, scientists have managed to obtain a huge breakthrough in strengthening the human body and prolonging its lifespan. Mankind could now retain their youth for a longer period. The breakthrough also increased the average lifespan of a person to 100 years old. At the same time, scientists had pointed out the necessity of working out the body. Henceforth, the age of exercise had arrived. In current times, sports tournaments and fighting competitions were the attention of the public eye. Just in the university alone, there were already plenty of sports societies and martial arts societies, and they were very welcomed by the students. In the current society, those who did not possess a trick up their sleeves would be looked down upon. On the other hand, those celebrity athletes and martial arts experts were absolutely revered. In the university, there was never a lack of beautiful women surrounding the distinguished athletes and students who often participated in mixed martial arts competitions. As for pretty boys, their time has long since faded from popularity. In his previous life, Shi Feng did not pay much attention to his body. As a result, he nearly caused its destruction. By the time he wanted to train his body, he was no longer young. Even if he had trained with all his might, the effects would not be great. In this life, Shi Feng would not be the same as before, naturally. He would not solely pay attention to God's domain, ignoring his body's training. After training for half an hour, Shi Feng's entire body was covered with sweat. It looked as if he had just taken a shower. Just when he was about to dine on his cooked instant noodles, his phone started ringing. Shi Feng looked at the contacting person. Unexpectedly, it was the usually silent female class monitor, Jia Ruoxi. Class monitor, what's up? Shi Feng asked after answering the call. According to Shi Feng memories, aside from attending classes, Shi Feng never had any contact with the female class monitor. Within the 4 years, Shi Feng had spent in the university, he had not spoken over 100 sentences with Jia Ruoxi. Shi Feng, hurry over to school. I failed to notify you of this because you do not live in the male dormitories, but now I'm telling you. At 11 o'clock, there will be an important matter being announced at Teaching Block 3, Classroom 401. Shi Feng looked towards the electronic clock on his table. It was already 10:30 right now. He answered, all right, I'll go there immediately. 45 The inferior student of the class. Cutting off the call, Shi Feng immediately ate his instant noodles and hurried to school. When he was on the road, Shi Feng finally recalled this incident. It was one of the reasons that caused his parents to fall gravely ill. In Shi Feng's previous life, he and Blackie joined Shadow Workshop. When Zharuoxi called him to go to the school, he chose to continue playing God's Domain instead of going. He joined Shadow Workshop after much trouble. If he wanted to rise in position within Shadow, he needed to have a good performance. How could he have the time to care about small matters that happened in the classroom? As a result, his university recommendation became non-existent. Although it was just a recommendation, it could allow students to find better jobs. The stress levels of the current society were extremely powerful, and jobs were not easy to find. Such a recommendation would be a stepping stone towards the higher levels of a company. Shi Feng's parents were deeply worried after they found out about this incident. It was also because of such worries that caused the mental stress on his parents to increase substantially. Only, Shi Feng's parents never revealed it to him. Instead, they encouraged him. They didn't want him to worry about their household debts. As a result, they became both physically and mentally exhausted, falling gravely ill a year later. In this life, Shi Feng did not wish to repeat such a disaster, even if the recommendation was absolutely useless to him. However, he also wished to know the reason that caused him to lose the recommendation. Shi Feng was considered average regarding results amongst his class. There were absolutely no problems with him obtaining the recommendation. He did not have a share in it. The only reason he could think of, for such a situation, was the incident that would happen today. After walking into the university, Shi Feng discovered a very interesting situation. The school was crowded, there was an abnormal number of students in the university today. Usually, there would not be that many people within the university grounds. The students would usually study in the library or gather outside to have some fun. Worst case scenario, they would just stay in their dormitories and play games. Unlike the current situation, they wouldn't normally come out for a stroll. When Shi Feng walked towards teaching block 3, he discovered that the normally empty classrooms were packed with people. All of them were fully occupied. What is happening today? Shi Feng was puzzled. The moment Shi Feng entered classroom 401, he could feel the air in the room was slightly odd. His classmates all shifted their gaze towards him, their expressions filled with astonishment. Shi Feng was like something that should not be there, yet had actually appeared. The male students only glanced at Shi Feng. They did not pay him any attention as they continued with their conversations. Meanwhile, some of the gorgeously dressed females in the class sent Shi Feng expressions of disgust. However, Shi Feng had long since gotten used to such reactions. When he was about to turn around and look at them, the females immediately turned their heads away. Fellow student Shi Feng, you're here. Find a place to sit. When fellow student Ling Filong arrives, everyone in the class will be present. The female monitor, Zharuoxi, had a calm expression on her face when she spoke to Shi Feng as if it was all just for formality's sake. However, Shi Feng could faintly feel a hint of expectation in Zharuoxi's eyes when she turned around to look at him. However, that expectation was not targeted towards him, but most probably towards the Ling Filong she spoke of. All right. Shi Feng nodded his head, simply choosing a corner to sit down in. As for sitting and starting a conversation with the other male classmates, Shi Feng could tell it would be impossible just by looking at their expressions. In regards to such a situation, Shi Feng could only let loose a bitter smile. In his previous life, he truly has failed at being a functioning human being. However, there was nothing he could do. To save money, he never participated in any of the student gatherings or class events. He had long since become an invisible existence within the class. In the eyes of his classmates, Shi Feng might be a very reclusive person. Why is this person here? The class monitor should be the one who notified him. I never thought he would actually show up. He's just an inferior student in the class. Just looking at him makes me mad. Look at how cunning his eyes are. Don't tell me he took a fancy to this young lady? Disgusting. The students in the class started a quiet discussion about Shi Feng. They were very shocked at Shi Feng's arrival. Usually, Shi Feng would never participate in any events, but now, this person, himself, actually showed up. Their disgust towards Shi Feng was clear in their speech. Their tones when speaking also showed how much they looked down on him. The reason for such treatment was because Shi Feng was weak. He was also often bullied by students from other classes. Moreover, he was the inferior student who was always too poor to join the class outings. It was just an embarrassment to be in the same class as him. Although their voices were soft, Shi Feng could still hear them clearly. It was better to say they let Shi Feng hear their conversation. Learning was only secondary in everyone's eyes. The truly important thing to have was a strong body. After all, the current age was one where body training was strongly emphasized upon. However, Shi Feng's weak body clearly did not fit the current age. So, naturally, he had become an outcast within the class. However, Shi Feng simply laughed away at his situation. He was no longer a child, so why would he be angry over the actions of these children? Currently, his heart was only concerned about the matters regarding the recommendation. Not long after, a robust youth entered the classroom. The youth's height was an entire 1.9 meters. This person was Ling Filong. According to Shi Feng's memories, Ling Filong was a person with many tricks up his sleeve. After he graduated from university, he managed to woo the princess of a large corporation. 3 years later, he became the corporation's CEO. However, due to the virtual world's influence towards the real world growing ever larger, Ling Filong invested in God's domain as well. At that time, he looked for Shi Feng, his classmate, wanting to collaborate in God's domain. At that time, Shi Feng was the captain of Shadow Workshop. He was also the guild leader of the guild, Shadow. Shadow was barely considered a second-rate guild during those times. However, it still had control over a large city with a population of 500,000 people. Considering they were once classmates, Shi Feng agreed to Ling Filong's proposal. Afterward, although Shadow earned quite a lot of money from the collaboration, Ling Filong earned even more. At the same time, Ling Filong groomed several powerful subordinates. Then, he somehow managed to gain the favor of a first-rate guild, abandoning Shadow. Everyone watched as Ling Filong entered the classroom. The male students all stood up, displaying their respect towards him. On the other hand, the gorgeous female students from before sent meaningful gazes towards Ling Filong. Even Xia Ruoxi had some changes to her calm expression. Shi Feng had plenty of experience with women in his previous life, so he could tell Xia Ruoxi was somewhat interested in Ling Filong. What kind of situation was this? Shi Feng could not make heads of the current situation. It would be fine if it were just the other students, but Xia Ruoxi was the class flower. She had a calm personality, an oval face, a graceful body, and even her family background were good. Normally, male students from other classes could be seen chasing after her. However, none of them ever entered her eyes. So, why did she take a fancy upon Ling Filong? Was Ling Filong fated to become a protagonist in life, a person who was loved and welcomed by all? Everyone, sit down. Like a leader, Ling Filong naturally walked up to the lectern. He gratefully said, "Thank you for coming to congratulate me. I would not be here today were it not for all of your support. Brother Filong, you are too humble. More than 5,000 people entered the school's fighting competition, yet you've managed to enter the top 10. You are the pride of our class. You now have the rights to enter Jinhai City's fighting competition without going through the pre-selections. This feat is not achievable by the average person. You mustn't forget about us once you've become a martial arts master in the future." "That's right, Brother Filong. We're looking forward to you becoming the champion." The students in the class gave their congratulations one after the other. Some of the female students even thought of throwing themselves at Ling Filong. However, Shi Feng was an exception. He was truly dumbfounded. Originally, he thought a huge incident occurred, but it was just the school's fighting competition having just ended. They were only here to congratulate Ling Filong for being able to enter the city's fighting competition. If it was before, Shi Feng might have envied Ling Filong. After all, there were just too many people who liked fighting competitions. Those who were able to participate in the city's fighting competition were much more appreciated than some big celebrity. This was due to the difficulty of entering the fighting competition. There was a strict selection system, and it was considered good to have 3 to 4 people selected out of 10,000. If these selected participants performed well, they might even get a contract to become the spokesperson for a large enterprise. With all the celebrity advertisements that would be offered, it wouldn't be difficult to amass wealth. Their futures would have boundless prospects. However, along with the rise in popularity of God's domain, people became even more addicted to fighting battles and wars in the game. After all, being able to personally experience the fight was still the best experience. The lack of danger of fighting in the game only made it even more exciting. As a result, many experts became idols of the players in God's domain.